February 1945. Allied bombers filled the skies over Germany, a storm of metal that blotted out the sun. Pilots thought they had seen everything, until something cut through the formation like a silver blade. A sound unlike any engine before it echoed through the air, a high-pitched scream that made even veteran pilots freeze. The object blurred past them, too fast to track, too smooth to be real. For a brief moment, every man in that cockpit thought the same thing. The Germans had built something impossible. That something was the Messerschmitt Me-262, the world's first operational jet fighter, a machine decades ahead of its time. It could outrun, outclimb, and outshoot anything the Allies had. And yet it changed absolutely nothing. Because the Me-262 was more than a weapon. It was a lesson in how genius can die under ego. The story began long before the war turned against Germany. Back in 1938, Adolf Hitler's regime was still basking in success. Austria had been annexed. Czechoslovakia was next. And the world feared the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force. But inside a workshop in Augsburg, a group of engineers was working on something the world hadn't yet imagined. A fighter that didn't need propellers, led by Willy Messerschmitt, one of the most ambitious aircraft designers of his time. The team wanted to build a plane powered entirely by jet propulsion, a revolutionary technology that replaced propeller-driven, thrust with pure exhaust from a turbine engine. It was a bold idea. At that point, most engineers thought jet power was years away from practicality. The British were experimenting quietly with prototypes, but Germany was the first to throw full industrial weight behind it. The first prototype, known as Project 1065, looked sleek and futuristic, but it couldn't even take off under its own power. Early tests had to use a small conventional engine just to get airborne. Still, it showed promise. And when the first pure jet prototype finally flew in 1942, engineers realized they had built something extraordinary. The Me-262 could reach speeds of 870 kilometers per hour, around 540 miles per hour, faster than any Allied fighter by a huge margin. It was smooth, agile, and deadly. Luftwaffe observers called it the Swallow for how it sliced through the clouds. If deployed quickly, it could have rewritten the story of air combat itself. But that wasn't the story Germany wanted to tell. By 1943, the war was turning. Allied bombers were reducing German cities to rubble. Factories, fuel depots, and railroads were engulfed in flames night after night. While German scientists were producing miracles, their leadership was crumbling. That's when Hitler got involved. And that's when everything went wrong. When Hitler saw the Me-262 for the first time, he didn't see a defensive weapon to protect his cities. He saw an offensive miracle machine, a weapon to strike back at the Allies, to destroy their armies from above. He imagined the Me-262 as a blitz bomber, capable of carrying bombs at jet speeds and overwhelming Allied ground forces. To him, that sounded like victory. To his generals, it sounded like madness. Adolf Galland, the Luftwaffe's top ace, pleaded with Hitler to let it remain a fighter. Germany needed air defense, not another bomber that would delay production. But Hitler refused. Obsessed with his vision of revenge, he demanded design changes that crippled the project's timeline. That single order delayed production by almost a full year. Engineers had to redesign the airframe to carry bombs, adjust its balance, and install new targeting systems. Each change added complications. And every month spent in redesign meant more. Allied bombers raining destruction over Germany. The irony was brutal. By the time the Me-262 Blitzbomber version was ready, Germany had almost no fuel left to fly it. Meanwhile, Allied intelligence had no idea what was happening behind German lines. Pilots reported strange contrails high in the atmosphere. Brief, bright flashes that vanished as quickly as they appeared. Rumors spread of rocket planes, but few believed such machines could exist in numbers. They were right. Germany no longer had the resources to mass-produce anything that advanced. By late 1944, the Reich was running on fumes, literally. Synthetic fuel production had collapsed. Factories were bombed daily, and engineers worked under constant air raids. The Me-262 Jumo turbojet engines were engineering marvels, but they required alloys that could withstand extreme heat. Metals Germany no longer had. Manufacturers resorted to cheap substitutes, and the result was catastrophic. Engines that burned out after just 10 to 25 hours of flight. Pilots had to handle them like glass, flying at low thrust to avoid catastrophic failure. Imagine flying the most advanced jet in the world, knowing it could die mid-air because your nation had run out of nickel. That was life for Me-262 pilots. When the jet finally entered combat, its effect was immediate and terrifying. Allied aircrews called it a silver ghost. It appeared out of nowhere, struck at speeds too fast for the human eye to follow, and vanished before any gunner could react. Its 430mm cannons could shred a bomber in seconds, but for all its power, the jet had one fatal flaw: takeoff. Early jet engines took several seconds to reach full thrust, leaving the Me-262 exposed and sluggish on the runway. Allied pilots learned to patrol near airfields, ambushing jets before they could climb to safety. Anti-aircraft guns tried to protect them, but the Allies always had more planes, more bombs, more everything. Inside the cockpit, flying the Me-262 was like controlling a lightning bolt. It was so fast that traditional dogfighting tactics became useless. Pilots couldn't turn tightly or chase targets for long. They had to dive in, strike once, and retreat, a hit-and-run strategy that demanded training. Germany no longer had the time or fuel to provide. Many recruits died before even mastering takeoff. Those who survived became legends. Pilots like Walter Nowotny achieved astonishing success, downing multiple bombers in a single mission. But even he was killed later that same day when his engines failed mid-combat. It became the Me-262's curse: brilliance followed by disaster. By early 1945, the Me-262's fate was sealed. Only 1 out of 400 were ever built, and fewer than 200 saw combat. Germany had no fuel, no pilots, and no time. The Allied invasion was underway, the Reich collapsing, and the dream of the jet age falling into ruin. Yet, as Germany's future crumbled, the rest of the world was watching and taking notes. When Allied forces captured German airfields, they didn't just find wrecks. They found blueprints, prototypes, and hidden factories carved deep underground. Operation Lusty, a U.S. mission led by American engineers, gathered entire planes and shipped them home along with the scientists who built them. The Soviets did the same. Before the war was even over, the race for post-war air supremacy had begun. In the months following Germany's surrender, American and Soviet engineers studied the Me-262 in awe. The swept wings, high-mounted engines, and tricycle landing gear, all hallmarks of modern jet design, were already there. The Me-262 wasn't just a weapon. It was the blueprint for the jet age. Its design influenced nearly every first-generation jet fighter, from the F-86 Sabre to the MiG-15. The technology Hitler hoped would save his empire instead laid the foundation for the Cold War. The world's first jet fighter didn't win Germany during the war. It gave victory to the future. Even more ironic was the cost. The Me-262 was built with materials Germany could no longer afford, in factories powered by forced labor under inhumane conditions. Each jet that emerged from those tunnels symbolized both technological brilliance and human suffering. And still, it wasn't enough to change the outcome. In the end, the Me-262 failed not because it was flawed, but because it arrived too late. Innovation means nothing without timing. Hitler's interference slowed it. Shortages crippled it, and desperation destroyed it. The Me-262 became history's most haunting what if, a symbol of what happens when genius is wasted by arrogance. When Allied engineers examined the wreckage in 1945, they realized they were witnessing the dawn of something entirely new. The war had begun with wooden biplanes and ended with jets, exceeding 500 miles per hour. Humanity had leapt decades forward in just 6 years. And much of that leap came from one doomed invention born in a collapsing empire. In that sense, the Me-262 did change the war, not for Germany, but for the world. It marked the end of the propeller age and the beginning of the jet era. It proved that victory isn't just about power. It's about vision, timing, and the ability to act before it's too late. When Allied soldiers stood beside captured Me-262s, They took photographs not as trophies, but as proof that they had witnessed history. They didn't know it yet, but they were standing beside the ancestor of every jet that would ever fly. From the F-86 that ruled Korea's skies to the stealth fighters of today. Because the Mi-262 wasn't just an airplane. It was a warning that technology without strategy is meaningless, that arrogance can kill brilliance, and that sometimes the future arrives too early for the people who create it. The Mi-262 could have changed the war. Instead, it changed the world for everyone else.